Welcome to the Simplified Year podcast, designed to support a rhythm of remembering what matters and releasing what doesn't through the sacred act of simplifying. This is a monthly episode where I'll do an overview of what we're covering this month in the Simplified Year rhythm, share some insights into what this journey can look like, and also, hopefully, help you not to feel alone no matter how your journey actually looks right now, because trust me, I've been there and I get it. I'm Brianna, a mama of 3, a minimalist, and a woman who deeply values what's honest and sustainable. Simplifying actually saved my life when I was so low I was ready to give up. So I take it seriously. After years of struggling and eventually mastering my own clutter, routines, and habits, clawing my way out of depression, anxiety, and self-shame as an ADHD woman with almost no support, I eventually started my online business career in roughly 2018 as a minimalist coach for moms who were overwhelmed with their clutter. Today, I'm still wildly passionate about helping other women simplify so they can live joyful, fulfilling lives with less stress and more ease. Simplifying is foundational in everything I do and has threaded its way into all the multi-passionate different directions my business has taken over the years. This isn't just some side hustle or random tangent for me. It matters so much. The Simplified Year rhythm is the result of almost a decade of my learning, implementing, and simplifying my stuff, my calendar, my business, and more, and then helping other women to do the same. I created it to repeat every year while still meeting you right where you are each time you return. I created this podcast to anchor you into that rhythm and call you back to it each month. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This episode is so late, and I'm not even going to share all of why here. If you ever want to hear my life updates and more of the nitty gritty, down and dirty details type content, make sure you're also following the Suspending Disbelief, the Next Chapter podcast and publication, where I share more about all of that kind of thing. Over there, I share all about the hardships, the tears, the kids' struggles, the motherhood things, as well as the wins, the progress, the celebrations, and some inspiration for you to grow as well. I'll link that in the show notes or description below for anyone who wants to go check that out. But here, I talk about what's going on for me in relation to decluttering, which is a lifestyle for me at this point. So there's always something going on, as well as collective energies for simplifying and straight up just to remind you to go and declutter this month. Now, so far in September, as I've been setting up for homeschool, I've been navigating a huge learning curve, one that includes dozens of tabs open at once while I plan a loose curriculum to submit to quote unquote the authorities to report on what we will be doing in homeschool for my son this year. So I'm researching teaching styles, learning styles, common curriculums, all different subjects, different priced resources, apps, games, programs, etc. And in general, not even just lately, but I often use Google Chrome's function to create tab groups. And it is super helpful up to a certain point, right? Because you can close out some of them and come back to them later without having to go search for them all again and everything. But too much of any good thing is not so good anymore, right? And I have accidentally fallen into the trap of creating too many tab groups, which just means that then I forget they exist. I open all those tabs again, create new ones, etc. I tend to open everything in the same browser instead of having one for work and one for personal. Some passwords are saved in the wrong browsers, etc. So entrepreneur problems, right? If you have a separate work computer at work, at a place of business somewhere away from home, it's probably a lot easier to keep it separate. But I have to be really intentional about using different browsers for that. It is actually very beneficial for me to do so instead of having them all lumped into one because I have different email addresses, so I'm logged in under different profiles and all of that, right? But yeah, sometimes some passwords are saved in the wrong browsers and I can't find the tab group that I thought I created. And so I go create a new one and it just ends up like it all piles up. And normally I like to be much more organized than this. And I can get really scattered and my ADHD can really kick in and take over if I let it, especially with digital clutter like this, where it's just so many in one place that it's almost easier instead of searching for what I had before to just open up new tabs. So that's what's been happening for me lately. And I have 3 things that I want to focus on today in this episode for this monthly episode. One is the work from home, homeschool, and sort of motherhood in general common challenge of too much screen time, and how what we model and how we show presence and attention to our children affects this challenge. And two, I want to deep dive a little bit into digital clutter, which is the focus in the Simplified Year Rhythm this month. And we will cover in the rhythm, we cover digital clutter in the form of digital storage that you pay for, hard drive folders, phone apps, and even digital photos. But there are so many facets that the posts can't even touch on in every part of the Simplified Year Rhythm. And so I want to try to touch on them in the episodes I share during sort of each swing of the wheel of the year. And this time, since it's been coming up for me, I'll talk about clearing tabs in your browser and those tab groups and everything else. And then finally, the third one I want to talk about is the news and how digital decluttering can impact your mental health and well-being. So first off, when you work from home, so if any of you are entrepreneurs, you will feel this one big time. When you're working online from home, you are on your computer so much more than normal, and even on your phone more than normal, because most things we can access on our smartphones these days, right? And if you homeschool and you do sort of more traditional homeschooling that's more curriculum based, you may find that you have the kids on the computer a fair amount as well, or using different apps for different subjects. And it's one of the most common complaints in motherhood these days is trying to get your kids to use screens less, trying to enforce screen time limitations, all of that kind of thing. And we all know that too much screen time is bad for our mental health, even for our physical health. Sitting and staring at a screen all day is just not what humans are supposed to be doing. And so as mothers, especially, we try to teach our kids to use screens less and be on screens less. And yet, a lot of the time, what we're modeling doesn't match that. And one of the beautiful things about digital decluttering, which again is the focus for this month, is the less stuff you have digitally, the less time you spend digitally, the less time you spend on a screen. And so when you want to model, or when you want your children to show a certain behavior, like less screen time, you need to model that behavior, right? Not just do what I say, not what I do. When you are trying to be a present mother, when you're trying to pay attention to your children and all of these things, but you have a screen going, even if you're listening, even if you are looking at them, but you're glancing back at your screen, you are not fully present with them. Your attention is not fully on them. And that teaches them about priorities. And the really hard truth is that if we're doing that, we are not making our children our top priority. And this has been a huge, huge thing for me in this calendar year, 2025. I have been hardly working. There's been a huge shift in what I'm doing online because I was doing so much before. And while I was probably one of the most present mothers that I knew, I still wasn't as present as I wanted to be. And the reason why is because I work from home and I would be sitting there working and talking to my kids at the same time, or they would be nearby playing while I worked or things like that. So I was physically present, but I was not always mentally present. And even when I was in a conversation with them, very often I was distracted by something on a screen. And this year, it has just not been a possibility for me to be on my screen that much. And so it has given me so much clarity on how it feels to do it differently. I think that's the thing, is that it feels so very different. And we can't even know how different it feels until we actually try it. And we need to try it for longer than a day or a week or even 1 month. It has to be a more ongoing, steady thing so that we can really feel the difference in our relationships with our children, with our partners. I'm a single mom, but many of you have a partner that you would be considering in this. And you will notice a huge difference in those relationships when your level of presence is elevated from turning off the screens. So all of this, this is not like get on a soapbox and try to convince you to do less screen time and all of that. But if you're dealing with that, just know that digital decluttering is a huge, huge bonus and benefit towards getting this done. So towards spending less time on screens, I should say. So when you, for example, go through your digital files, your folders on your hard drive and all of that, and you clean that out, it becomes so much easier to find the things that you need, which saves you time. Okay. When you clear out digital photos, it's the same thing, right? Same with tabs. So this is the one that I've been dealing with, these like having too many tabs open in the browser, saving them as tab groups, having them all like quote unquote organized, but then struggling with that organization because there's too many of those groups. So going through combining all of those and cutting some out that don't really need to be saved or that no longer apply, and going through my bookmarks list and through my bookmark bar, and just generally removing duplicates, removing things that no longer apply. And this has been time consuming. I will say that it took quite a bit of time going through and sorting sort of what needed to be where, copying things over into a different browser so that my personal stuff was in one and my work stuff was in another, and having it all be clear and easy to find, and a system that is easy to maintain going forward, right? Things named in a way that I'm going to be like, I'm not going to be questioning what actually was that, what was that for, what was I thinking when I grouped these together, what is this, and so making it so much simpler for myself. Yes, it took time to implement in the first place, but it has made it so that I have, when it's time, and I have very limited time to work at this point, but when it's time to work, when I actually have 5 minutes, 20 minutes, even an hour of uninterrupted work time, I'm able to go directly to what I need to go to, get it done, and move on, instead of searching and wasting so much time in that search that I wasn't accomplishing things, right? So this entire year, and it is now nearing the end of September, we're past the middle mark of the month of September. And for this entire year, I have hardly gotten to work at all. And that is largely due to personal life stuff going on and all the things with my kids that have been happening. But it would have been better. It would have run smoother. I would have been more productive in a healthy sense of the word, right? Not like the pushy productive, but I would have been productive in the windows that I had time to work if I had this sorted. So that is just an example of why it's so important to digitally declutter, right? And it's something that a lot of people don't think about until, a hard drive is full or a folder is full and can't save anymore, or they're paying for extra storage, which we do cover that digital storage that you pay for this month as well. But it is something that most people don't really think about, how much time they actually spend finding what they want to work on. And that can be, even if you're not an entrepreneur, even if you don't work from home, even if you're not homeschooling, even if you're not a mom, this applies, right? This is something that we have all dealt with, is just having so many things on the go at once. When we're doing that in a digital format, it can seem like, because our device is so small, that it's not a big impact on our lives. But these devices hold so much that it is a huge impact on our lives. It makes a huge difference. And I can attest to this. I've learned it before in different formats. This one, the Google tab groups thing is relatively new in the last couple of years. And so I had never made a system for it before. I have made a system for Google Drives. I have made a system for all of these different types of things, but I had never done one for this. So this is a newer one for me. And if it's one that you struggle with as well, hopefully this is helpful for you. So just go through, see what you can consolidate, see what no longer applies that can just be closed out. Try to make the labels on the tab groups be something that really makes sense to your brain, that is logical and easy enough to, if you ever have to add a new one, that it would make it easy enough to name something again in the same format without having to like think it through and plan it all out again and everything. Try to have it be really simple, streamlined, and make it a habit, right? Make it a habit to clear them out every once in a while. In all of the simplified year rhythm posts, there are habit pieces, and we talk about all of the different little tweaks and adjustments that we can make to our habits that will help to maintain the simplified versions of these things. Because one of the biggest problems that people have in this day and age is, we try to declutter, we try to simplify, and then we end up in the same mess again. But we don't want that. We want it to be a permanent solution, or at least a much longer lasting one. And there will always be some decluttering and simplifying ongoing tasks. There's maintenance mode, right? And this is one of those things where if you start to consistently go through and just skim through and make sure that you are erasing things that you no longer need and deleting stuff that no longer applies and that you've moved on from and consolidating things that you've accidentally duplicated, it will make a huge impact in your life as to how much time things take you. So anyways, I hope that that part was helpful for some of you. That's one of the ones that I don't cover in the posts, and I just thought I'm going to dive into this today. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was just more the general digital decluttering. And I kind of already covered this a little bit, but we talk about digital storage that you pay for. So when you declutter this stuff, you end up paying less money, which also translates into not needing to work as much to make as much money, right? Same with hard drive folders as far as the time it takes you to find things. Same with phone apps. So this one is huge, especially for those of us with like iPhones, Samsung, all of the smartphones nowadays. We have so many apps and we can't even find them or we forget they even exist. And every single one of them is slowing our devices down so that everything takes just that fraction of a second longer to process, to load, to whatever. And then as they fill up, all of a sudden it can be like, oh, we wanted to capture a picture in a really special moment, but cloud storage is full or whatever. So then instead of like we're in that moment and we don't have the time to sit there and go through and delete pictures. And so we end up just paying more. And then we forget that we did that last month. And then it charges us more every month for a while until we finally figure it out. And we kind of touched on that stuff last month for Money Month. But this is it's such a common theme, right? And it applies across the board. It can apply, you can have the paid Google Drives as well that are bigger and save more in them. But no matter which one or ones, if you have multiple, that you're paying for, it won't ever go away. You'll keep on paying for that forever unless you declutter. And you'll keep on paying more and more and more because not only do prices go up, but if you're not doing digital declutters, you are only adding to everything that's there. And we have so many files now. Nobody in their entire lifetime could go through them all in time. So it is absolutely important to take the time to do digital decluttering. Now, this can apply to, like I said, our files, our tabs, our photos, the storage that we pay for, but it can also apply to how much time we're spending on our screens, which I was already sort of talking about with the modeling it for our kids and the examples that we want to set and the choices we're making. If say you're homeschooling, the choices in programming that you're making for your child and whether they'll be on screens doing it or on paper or just getting physically active. That's been a big one for my son is we're aiming for the physically active instead of sitting on paper or on a screen. And same with that, really wanting to be present in motherhood, just choosing, right? Choosing to stop the scroll, choosing not to get on our phones until we've spent time connecting or on our screens at all. And especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're a solopreneur, you're working for yourself, you're a mompreneur and maybe like me you're a single mompreneur and it's just like every moment is precious, but sometimes we lean into that in the wrong direction and we go every moment is precious, like I'm never going to have enough time on my screen to get my work done. And then sometimes we can lean into it in the other direction and every moment is so precious that I don't want to get on my screen because the moments spent with my children tech free are so much more and so much better when I leave those screens off. So that's maybe a perspective shift. Maybe it's something you've heard before and maybe you're hearing it again, but it hits differently this time, but hopefully it's helpful. And then finally, tied in with that one, with the amount of time that we're spending on our screens is what are we looking at on our screens? And decluttering what we look at digitally is huge. So back in COVID in 2020, when COVID first started, the news was so crazy all the time. And I know that this is a common thing that several people that I've spoken to, and probably many, many more, have had this happen. But as everybody was watching the news in COVID, everything was so full of fear and horrible things were happening. And it was just this. And I know that this is sort of always how the news is. For me, I never was a big news person. But with COVID, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to know what's happening. And so I was watching it all the time. And my mental health suffered so much from that. I had to completely go cold turkey, like no news whatsoever. I will just trust that if there's anything important that I need to know, that my loved ones will tell me, kind of thing, because I could not handle it. And I would have, I almost had a panic attack in a grocery store one day because I was just on edge all the time because of it. And it is not just during COVID. And I know that's just like, that's the one example that I have of when I did this. But for everybody who tends to get lost in the doom scroll or watch the news or have it running in the background sort of 24/7, or even reading news apps, whether you're listening, reading, watching, it doesn't matter. It's decluttering what you put into your head, what you watch through your eyes, what you listen to through your ears, right? Actually be intentional with the content that you're digesting, because it has a tremendous impact on your mental health and well-being. And one of the amazing things this year for me has been, although it's been a forced stop to a lot of my work, it has had a massive impact on my mental health and well-being with my children, because we're off screens, we're connected, it took a while, but we are feeling more human. We are acting more human. We are not just robots sitting on screens anymore. And as much as I thought we were connected before, we are so much more connected now. So I can only recommend this like over and over and over again, that maybe you don't want to go cold turkey and not watch any news at all like I do, but less is better, right? I find any of it just drags me down. It's not worth it. I can hear the most important news from a few reliable sources that I trust, and in a way that's not so confronting, not so aggressive, not so hard on my nervous system, not so disruptive of my life, or um cutting in at a time when I don't say it's okay. And that's a big thing with it, is that when you're just watching the news, you're watching things live, you don't have a say in what you're seeing and what's coming up on the screen in front of your face, in what you hear, in what you learn from that. This is a way of taking back control, right? It's turning off the notification, turning off and just the background noise, choosing to be off of a screen for designated times of the day or different hours of the day, and so on. And when you do this, it gives you the time to feel more human again, to feel more connected with the earth, with the people around you, with the cycles of life, and even with your belongings, and knowing what you need and what you don't need, knowing what you like and what you don't like, all of it. That when we are constantly on a screen, it just really forces other people's agendas into our minds. And I find for myself, I still know all of the most important things that are going on globally, economics, politics, whatever, all of it. But I know it in a way where I don't open my phone and read those messages until I'm ready for something to interrupt my day. And so even if I read a message from a loved one who is one of my main news sources and they tell me something negative, I'm only reading it at a time where I'm prepared to take that on, instead of it just being shoved down my throat. And it has made a massive difference in my life. Every stage of this has made a massive difference in my life. And just like any other kind of decluttering, it has been done in stages. I went from, if you read my posts all about it, I went from basically not quite hoarder level, but pretty close. Like it was pretty darn close. Everything was so full, everything was overflowing when I was with my ex-husband, to now being a minimalist. And I still have more than I necessarily want, but because I have children and I do take their opinions into consideration. But it all happened in stages. It happened over years. And that's why we have the simplified year rhythm, because it's a cycle that you just kind of pass over again and again and again, to slowly reduce the distractions and simplify your life and get rid of excess. And that is in every format: physical, digital, mental, emotional, all of it. And it all ends up tying together. And digital was one of the later ones for me. I needed to do the physical 3D in my face clutter first, but digital was no less important and it was no less impactful on my mental health and my well-being and on my time and on my finances and all of it. And so when you're ready, at whatever pace you're ready at, and in whatever chunks you can handle, any digital decluttering and simplifying of your life will save you time and improve your mental health. And I can promise you that. So I hope that this episode was helpful. Not sure what part of the world you're in here. Our kids just go back to school in September, but actually, just like last year, the teachers are threatening a strike this year. So we may be just back to all the kids are home soon here. And everything just seems to be really up in the air this year for me. So anywhere that I can simplify my life to make myself more flexible to be able to handle everything that life is throwing at me, I love. And so I want to share about it. So I hope that that was helpful, and I will talk to you all next time. Remember, whether you're doing this in rhythm with us or you hopped in at whatever point is aligned in your life right now, you are right where you need to be. Head over to the Simplified Year Rhythm tab on the Substack publication, which is linked in the show notes, and do a quick search for the area of your home or life where you need the most support, or for the name of the month we're in right now. I'll talk to you next time.